Good afternoon. So here at the shop, like always, and I just took this car out and showed it to my buddy Kyle a couple days ago, and I've noticed that it's been leaking a little bit more oil than I want to, and right now it's not. But then my oil spot, where my car parks all the time, is getting pretty bad. So I got an oil pan gasket, it's a Fel Pro over here, and I'm gonna go and install that today. And the only thing that's tricky about doing that is that this exhaust is welded in all in one piece, which means that like the headers welded to the resonate, well, where a resonator would be welded, and then all the way back from 2 1/4 to 2 1/2 to 3 inch piping all the way back to the tip. So I have to drop the whole exhaust, move that out of the way just to get access to the oil pan. So it's gonna be a little bit tricky, but it'll be fun. So first things first is I'm gonna disconnect these bolts on the front of my header, and then I should be able to drop this all the way down. Let me get under the car real quick and I'll show you. So this is the bottom half of the header where it goes from 4 to 2, and then this is my oil pan, so you have to drop it down far enough and pull it over to the side so you can drop the whole oil pan in. You can see that it's all welded together. And so that's going to be kind of tricky. Oh, I'm going to have to take that oxygen sensor off too. Good thing I saw that. So, yeah. It's not going to be terribly hard. The only thing that kind of sucks is I've had multiple Hondas, and I've always had them leak from the oil pan. And I've tried so many different ways and stuff like that. So hopefully this will be the time that I actually get it done right and it doesn't leak, because you can't have oil leak on your race car.
Shutterstock Music.
So I just got done dropping my header, and one thing happens, like when you have a header that's been on there for a really long time, and it's been on for at least about 3 to 3.5 years that I've had this car, is that you'll either break a stud, which I haven't, but the stud will pull out from the head. So the nut stays on, and then when you go and you crack it, the nut pulls the stud out, which it won't cause any damage to your header or to the block or anything like that. You won't get like an exhaust leak. You just go and you just throw them back in. So now let's go and see underside the car and see what kind of damage we have. Because literally, dude, look at my freaking transmission. You know how I'm always talking about my car is so pieced together? Yeah, it's been like this since I've owned it. And it's like, what do they do? Jump this thing? So now I got my header dropped. I had to take my oxygen sensor and disconnect that. And I got as far down as I can. Now I got access to the oil pan, and you can tell the oil pan definitely needs to be changed. And so there's these bolts, there's 14 to 16 of them all the way around. What you do is you don't have to take them off in a particular order, but when you put it back on, you have to go in like a zigzag pattern or something like that. You can look them up online. I usually just go from like the inside out and hand tighten them, and then I go back and I torque them down. So I asked my buddy, the one that has the Prelude, if you watch that video, very knowledgeable guy, I asked if he uses like a silicone or a sealant or anything like that, and he uses nothing. And so I have never really had good luck with doing oil pans, because everything I had was like dirt nasty low, and they've been hit and stuff like that. So this one looks like it possibly has been hit, but I haven't had this thing as low as like my Del Sol back in the day or anything like that. So hopefully I can get this thing to where it doesn't leak.
Shutterstock Music. Shutterstock Music.
So it just took me like an hour to pull off all the old gasket on this thing. It was stuck on there like a rock solid. I guess this thing hasn't been off in like forever. So I had to take a drill and a steel wheel first, and then a brass wheel to clean it up. And then to polish it up, I used a 80 grit or 120 grit sanding wheel. Got it real nice and smooth because you want a very smooth surface to mate it so it doesn't leak. I wiped off the inside really good. I used like some WD-40. I wouldn't use any like Simple Green or degrease or anything like that. And I just WD-40'd it, wiped it out real nice and clean. It's all dry. And then did the outside of the pan too. So it's ready for this new gasket. So one of the really tricky parts about doing an oil pan gasket that I've done ever since I've been working on cars is when they come in a box, they're all bundled up, so you can never get them aligned with all the holes for the oil pan and aligning up the oil pan holes in the gasket also. So what I did was I took some RTV and I put them in the corners, just one here, one there, one in the back corner, back right corner. And then for like the last 2 days, I've had a battery and then some torsion keys from my Suburban weighing this thing down, so hopefully it's dried and stuck the oil pan gasket to the oil pan, and then I can flip this thing around, mount it under my engine, and then we'll be good. Alrighty, so I was time-lapsing, but I mean, basically, I was time-lapsing for probably, it would have been about 45 seconds. It would have been boring anyways, but you guys get the picture. So I started, you know, in the center, worked my way to the other side, and then kind of went around in a circle. So I would have gone to the right, and then the bottom, and then to the left, and then worked my way out hand tight, and started right here, and then tightened just with a wrench and went a quarter turn all the way around. So in theory, I've done that before in the past, and that's worked for me. So I'm not sure if it's going to work for you if you watch this video and you're like, oh, my oil pan's leaking. Well, every single Honda I've ever had has leaked oil, but this was like a big leak. So I honestly wouldn't even mind if it leaked just a little bit, whatever, it's a Honda. But, you know, as long as I fix my leak, then, you know, good for me, right? So now I'm going to go and put my oxygen sensor back on, throw my header back on, and then that should be it. Oh yeah, and then I had to take my exhaust hanger off and drop it down some more so I can get my header down as far as I can. So yeah, I'm almost done. Sweet, everything's back together. So let's do a little bit of a recap. So this is H22. This way of taking off the oil pan might work with a B series, D series, K series, J series, whatever Honda motor you have, but this is H22. And so the first thing I did was I had to disconnect my header. These are all 12mm nuts that are on studs on the head. And then this one's always a tricky one, the ones on the bottoms. And then you have to go and disconnect that, drop it down as far as you can so you can get access to the oil pan. So as you're dropping this header down, you'll have to take off at least one oxygen sensor or disconnect it from your wiring harness so you can drop the header all the way down to gain access to the oil pan. Under this motor is the oil pan, and there's between 14 and 16 bolts and nuts that you have to take off. They're all 10mm nuts and bolts. You take that off, you reinstall your gasket, you clean up your oil pan, you throw it back on, and you should be good. Do a little zigzag pattern. You know, you go from one side to the other, and then you go and you work your way out to evenly push the gasket and mate it to the pan and the bottom of the engine block. And you shouldn't leak any oil. So no promises. I just put oil. I haven't started my car up yet. We're about to find out if I leak any oil. And then if we're not, then dude, I'll be excited because I'll be one step closer to being more reliable racing this thing. So let's see if I leak any oil. All right, now it's running. I've already jumped under here once before. See, a little tiny oil spot right there. But I hope not, but I also think that might be my rear main seal. But other than that, all the way around, usually if you have a leak, it will leak all the way around. So I think the oil pan gasket's good, but that's no bueno. So let's jack up the car and see what it is. So I got some good news and bad news. Good news is that I am not leaking anywhere except right there. So this rear main seal, I've never changed it out. I've never had this transmission apart, but I want to say it's probably leaking from the rear main seal because I don't really want to tighten up those bolts anymore. where it would be leaking from, because then it will start pushing the gasket. So, good news. I don't leak as much as I do like before I started this. So, yeah, that's what's up. So, that continues this video. Thanks guys for watching. I really like making these videos and I really enjoy editing them and stuff like that. And thank you guys for all the comments, which is not very much, but it's a lot for me. So, yeah. Thank you guys. Keep on watching cool videos, and I'll keep on making them.